The agenda. Okay, nobody's got to be moved around. Okay. As far as introduction as guests, we'll just go around the table. If you just state your name and where you're from, so Chief Mitchell and some of the other people who don't know each other have an understanding where we are, what's going on. We'll start right away with Brett Waters.
Dan Exton, Albemarle County, Virginia.
Frank Crosby.
DC, Sussex County, Delaware.
Dave Fulmer, Westlake Joint Fire District, Columbus, Ohio.
Joe Florentino, Little Island, Texas. Ken Richards, Ole Miss State, Connecticut.
Randy Parr, Caldwell, Texas.
Keith Brower, Loudoun County, Virginia.
Ron Otto, Lidditz, Pennsylvania.
John Buckman, German Township Fire Department, Evansville, Indiana.
Mark Sahara, the other Ponderosa Fire Department, in Florida, Arizona.
You've got the tree.
Jeff Segrist from Provident Insurance in Pennsylvania.
Fred Windish, Houston.
Shane Ray, South Carolina.
Troy Markle, VFIS, Pennsylvania.
Dave Wires, VFIS, Gladfelder Insurance Group, Pennsylvania.
Skip Gibson, ISO, New Jersey, near Philadelphia.
Joelle Fishkin, Fairfax County, Virginia, IAFC staff.
Georgia, VFIS, New Jersey, Pennsylvania.
Ernie Mitchell, U.S. Fire Administration.
Frank Playas, formerly Montgomery County, Maryland, Sussex, Delaware, and now down here.
Scott Seifert, Spring Fire Department, Houston, Texas.
Dave Blow, Madison, Wisconsin.
Mike Jaffa, Santa Fe County Fire Department, New Mexico.
Tim Wall from Wallingford, Connecticut. Some of you are new to our board meeting, and we welcome you here and your participation. If you have a question or a concern, or you want to give an idea, please do that. By all means, you can't sit there and be careful if I look at you, because then that means I'll probably put you on committee. All right, with that, I'd like to welcome Chief Ernie Mitchell, U.S. Fire Administrator, to our board meeting.
Thank you. I'll stand for the first part of this, but I don't know if I can stand long enough to keep talking for 50 minutes. But just thank you for the invitation, really. I wish I could have come here in November, but confirmation was still not completed, and I had been warned many, many times, don't act confirmed before you actually are confirmed. And so don't go anywhere, don't do anything that may put you in a lot of danger, calling yourself a U.S. Fire Administrator. So just could not do that, and some other things. But I truly do value this time. And Shane, thank you for the prayer. And it's a great day that the Lord has made. So I'm not a preacher, but I recognize these things better now that I'm older. So I'm frequently saying thank you. So most of what I get asked is like, what's going on with the U.S. Fire Administration, and what's your passion? I think that was the first thing someone asked me. That I was at FRI, and I went past the booth that the USFA had, and one of the employees actually asked me that question. I was running around being an incognito visitor, and all of a sudden I thought, oh, I'm being interviewed. And switched his hat around. But it made me think about that. I mean, really think about that, and how to sum that up in something short and concise. And really, my passion is not so much. I mean, first of all, a lot of the talk is about leadership, following leadership. But what has resonated with me over the years really is, it fits for me, is the idea of servant leadership. So I just need to be real clear that I have, because of my exposure to people like you all, that I've learned that I don't have all the answers that I thought I had when I was a new fire officer, and when I was a new battalion chief, and when I was a new fire chief. And so it's very similar as the U.S. Fire Administrator. I don't have all the answers. I do know that there are excellent people in the fire service with great ideas. There are organizations with outstanding missions and the people are working hard. So I need to present, I need to hear from you, I need to know what it is that is important to the fire service, and I need that from the fire service. I have my assumptions, you know, and my opinions about that. But I like to make sure mine are consistent with the people that are in the field and actually the people on the ground. The most important, biggest lesson I probably learned in the fire service is that it's all about the people. It's all about the people in the organization. It's all about the people we serve. So if I say that, but I'm thinking I have all the ideas and I'm not hearing it and I'm not receiving, then I'm not walking that. So I won't dodge any kind of ideas like leave it what do I think should be done. But really, I'm open to hear, to validate that and to hear that that's where we are. I think it's important. It's extremely important to me that we be unified. We, the process, be as unified as we can be and find some things to be unified about. I think that's how we will move forward. And so I want to focus on those things that we can work on together, all of us. And I think that's how we'll have the best opportunity for success in Washington. What I'm passionate about, besides my family, the fire service, is saving more lives. I guess that sums it up. And I'm talking about civilian lives and firefighter lives, first responders. And so what things we can do to save more lives is what I'm about. We talked about this some last night. It's the what and the why. The how we work through is different. It's going to be done different ways in different regions. That's another learning lesson for me. People oftentimes would say, well, what do you think? How do you think we ought to do that? And you know, when I found out what works in one geographic location doesn't work in another. And so it's really important that we blend those ideas and that we give people enough latitude to do it the way that they can be effective where they are. So, question came up, we started talking last night about how I became a firefighter a little bit. And you know what, I don't know that I need to tell that whole story, but one thing, but then someone threw a question out. Said, did you start volunteering? And I said, well, no, I didn't, you know. But I thought about something. I think when I first asked my wife what she thought about changing my major from engineering to fire science to becoming a firefighter, her response was, I think that's too dangerous. I was working at the county fire headquarters as a civilian mapping person, mapper, surveyor. And so I was becoming acquainted with the firefighting and the fire service. But it was new to us. And so we went back and forth, and I kept observing. I kept talking to firefighters, mostly fire chiefs. In fact, Chief Klinger's office was right next to my office. Chief Klinger was like the person behind ICS in the old fire scope in California when he started it up. And him and staff, and they would encourage me. It's like, you how old? 21. Yeah, you should think about being a firefighter. But the county fire, large department, they called for volunteers to go with the Foundation for the Junior Blind. I didn't think about this until you asked the question. And take kids and escort them and walk them around Disneyland. And they had different levels of ability. So some could kind of see, some you had to explain the color, some you had to hold their hand. And so my wife and I volunteered to do that. And they did it annually. So we started doing that with the fire department. And that's the first time I was part of something like that. And I think, and saw how the firefighters helped. It was like a big old, Disneyland was closed down except for us and the kids. And it was just like a big family function. And I think that kind of tipped me over. So, you know, this is what I want to be a part of. That was that tipping point that said, you know, I thought I wanted to do this, but this is what I want to do. And it's just, from that moment forward, it's been a great group of people with great causes and willing to work. So that's where I come from. For me, it's still about serving and serving others. Rotary, clicked, service above self, and that thing. in Compton, it was make a difference. So there have been a number of lessons learned along the way. And that's I don't think I can do anything other than what I can do and who I am. So I'll talk to you briefly about, let's say, some of the realities and complexities we're facing at the USFA today. What I'd really like to do is have more of a conversation with you to see what your interests are, what we can do for you. I think that's what we're here for. So probably at the top of a lot of people's minds, and the questions I get asked from the interviewers is, well, how are you going to operate with this budget, with these budget reductions? And it's difficult, but it's not so difficult because you have no choice. I guess what I mean by it, mentally, it's a struggle. It can be a struggle, especially somebody that always wants to do more for more people. But we started off looking at a $3 million cut. We ended up, so far, the actual discussion about the budget cut will happen tomorrow. We submitted information. They had enough putbacks to get down to about 1.5 reduction. The struggle for U.S. administration in this is that we haven't had big increases over the years. So when they start doing percentage cuts across the board and throughout FEMA, FEMA's had big bump ups out of the necessity based on less than great performance at a few emergencies that we've heard of, disasters that we've heard of. So they've been making cuts based on plus-ups and based on increases, but our cuts are really not into the muscle. You know, we've been advised in terms of priorities that the only thing that we don't cut are statutory requirements, things that says we shall do. And there are a lot of good things, though, that we do or have been doing that we have to all put on the table. And staff has gone through some tough exercises and working on that. Essentially, the budget was done when I got here, before I was confirmed. And then, as I was coming in and going out that first couple of weeks, we got a budget number. And then it was like, well, they're giving this much back. We need to come up with a list. We need to strike some things that were being cut. And I was on the road. I think I had gone back to California. And I said, well, I'd like a little more. There was a proposed list. And I'm going like, I see this, but I don't know what went into this. I'd like to discuss this. How much time do we have? It was like 2 days. And I wasn't going to be back in time. So that, you know, the system, federal system, moves slowly when you're waiting on stuff. It moves fast when they want stuff from you. I mean, so far, that's what I'm finding. And so I said, I'll trust you all that I know you worked hard on it. I know your intentions are good, so we'll trust what's here. My question was, because there were a couple of things on there that I said, wow, really? We have to, these have to go? I said, will there be some flexibility during the year where if we save in one area, we can reallocate or move some things over? And Glenn, and you all know Glenn said, yes, we should have those opportunities. I said, okay, that's the best, that's about as good as it gets. But those are our struggles. So there may be, and then we hear more cuts may be on the way. So there may be cuts that touch you, touch your organization. Let us know. Let me know anyway. But we need your support with others that have more control over the budget than we have over the budget. So I just let that say, we can't, although we can advocate, it's all internal. I don't get to go externally and talk to, let's say, legislators. If they want to talk to me, then I have to go to legislative affairs and they need to be there with us just to have a conversation.
What is your approximate?
Yeah, I brought the numbers. Let's see. The appropriation was $45,588,000, and then there was a decrease of $3,050,000. $1.5 million was restored, making the appropriation $44,038,000. We looked at numbers, and then next year we're actually looking at going down to $42,520,000. And we look at the trending for the past 10 years, and along with the conservative inflation factor, and we're at a level lower than we were 10 years ago. So these are really significant cuts. And most of our funds, are spent on service and product delivery, if you want to call it that. Classes we can hold and programs that we partner in and sort of support and having them happen. And we're looking at some things that are troubling to reduce. And at the same time, we're looking to expand what we do. We have expanded. One of my questions was, these things that were added, were they appropriated? No. So that's a bit of a struggle. I'm trying to figure out work to say, well, we've taken on other responsibilities. There needs to be some appropriations for those things because they can be taking money from other services. The relationship inside FEMA, I'll talk about that for a minute. I thought I somewhat understood what the fire administration and the administrator did to a certain extent. I did not understand how involved you are inside FEMA. And that really is a big demand because FEMA is very active right now and developing lots of plans. And the fire administrator, our office that I'm in most of the time is at 500 C Street in the FEMA headquarters. And the administrator has like every Tuesday at lunchtime meeting around a small table. And I'm part of that group. And then we have a senior leadership for FEMA and region meeting in the Office Center there, and I'm part of that group. And then if things in DC go to heck in a handbasket, and there's a group that goes to Mount Weather, I'm part of that group. But I haven't been out there to get my ID and get my clearance to get in the building yet, or in the mountain. I said, well, so how does this work? And nobody's we have an appointment set up for the 24th. And I get these pages, these emergency pages from the coop, as we call it. This is funny, sort of. And with these, their tests, alerting system tests, like you need to come in and do this. They have some amazing alerts. It might snow today, so those of you that want to go do teleworking 2 hours early, go ahead. But that doesn't include me. But I get these. They say call this number or respond to this email, and I call the number. And the first time I tried it, it said, "Now give us your code number." My what? And no one told me that. So I never could answer that one. So when I got back to the office after that weekend, I said, "So what's my code?" He said, "Well, it's usually your home telephone number." Okay. So the next time I get one, I put in my home telephone number. It said, "Incorrect, not invalid code number." Oh, man. So I called up another number, and I said, "Well, what is this?" They said, "Well, you didn't give us your home number, so it would be your cell phone number." So I put my cell phone number in, and it worked. Problem is, my wife keeps getting these phone calls from this thing that tells me I didn't give them my home phone number. So then she says, "What should I do? This number keeps calling me." But so I have some responsibilities within FEMA that I'm still trying to, get oriented about, get filled in about. I've already told them, I said, your orientation process is not good. because I said, there's not a book, there's not there's nothing, and no one sits you down and says, these are the things you need to know, except for the ethics guy. You get to spend, I spent 3.5, 4 hours with him, telling me why I couldn't go to CFSI and things like that, and under what conditions. So it's a challenge. That part's a challenge. The great part, people like Glenn and people on the staff that really are working hard, that really take a lot of pride in the work product and in supporting the fire service. And so I think what we need, because they're going to work real hard on the inside, we need support from the outside, and we need input. We need to know when things don't work well. If the website isn't intuitive enough, we need enough people saying, that doesn't work for us. I haven't seen yet that we're really doing any user groups, because I try to find some of these things and I can't find them. So we're going to work on just basically getting better. What we're in the midst of now, reauthorization. So I'll tell you what we've asked for. Stop me at any time with questions, please. We went in and sat with congressional staff for last week, and the question is your authorization good as is? Do you need to change it, modify it in some way? So there are some things that we are doing and talking about doing, and we said, well, you know, there's a question on whether or not we've really been authorized, even though we've been asked to do these things. So we probably ought to adjust our reauthorization in case these challenges come up. Plus, if they're formally authorized, I'm thinking maybe we get some appropriations to go along with that. So one of the things that we sat down is to clarify the authority of the administrator to collaborate with the Associate Administrator for Grants Preparedness Directorate on the development of fire grant priorities and guidance to address the needs of the U.S. Fire Service. Now, we have an informal relationship, but there, where we are in consultation with grants and have participated with the needs assessment and make recommendations, but there's nothing formal saying that they have to listen to us or that they even have to hear us. So we should probably, Elizabeth's good to work with, but we should probably put this down. Someone else may come in that says, I don't know that I really need to listen to the USFA. So we've asked, as they look at language, to keep us engaged in that. And I've had good discussions with Elizabeth Harmon, Zoe Grants, about it. She comes out of the fire service. She worked at the IAFF, and she's responsive to our needs, I believe. And I said, you know, the USFA needs probably a bigger role in the entire process. So can we talk about how to do that? And she has said yes. And they're having a conference call on Monday to talk about the budgeting and things within Grants Program Directorate, and she's invited us in on that call. This hasn't been happening in the past. I feel like I'm there with FEMA. The administrator makes it very clear to all of us in the room, we are FEMA. We are not grants and we are not USFA. He looked at me when he said, and we are not X, Y, and Z. We are FEMA. Now, I hear that. But I'm flipping that around to say, okay, we're FEMA, then we want to play. We want a piece of this action here. We want some of the resources. You have a lot more than we have. And we believe share your vision of a whole community approach to emergency management. That means we really need, if we're going to be a partner, we need to be a real partner in that, you know. What they need to understand is that we have a mission separate and apart from disaster and emergency management, and that we need to have that supported and supported well, and that builds a base for national preparedness, and that builds a base for whole community emergency management. So getting us in, I'm talking with Fugate, and I'm talking with his chief of staff, and I'm talking with his deputies, and I'm talking with Elizabeth and Grants and everyone else to say, what can we do to better support and get, you know, somebody in our office says, we're like 4 or 5 hairs on the tail of the dog. So to break that down, I said, well, that's okay, I got it. So that means we need to move, get to become 9 or 10 hairs, and we need to move past the butt and get up on the shoulders here, and maybe we can even push the head some direction once in a while. But that's you know, that's a process, and we need to demonstrate our value.
Chief, one of the things we've done is we've met with our, going down to their office, and that led to their staff coming to present that symposium.
Yeah.
So we're slowly trying to sell
Good.
to build relationships.
That's good. She's pretty open. In fact, I spoke with her prior to going through the confirmation process. I was giving her contact information, and they asked her if she'd talk to me about going through the process. We can have that conversation. The Senate confirmation hearing is not so much after the rest of the process. Really, and although you may all know that there's legislation that's already been approved in the Senate to take about 100 positions out of semi-confirmation, and U.S. Fire Administrator being one of them. We're not so sure that's a good idea. And I've talked to other former fire administrators that aren't so sure that's a good idea. And internal to FEMA, there are people that would just assume the responsibilities of the U.S. Fire Administrator. I don't think it's a good idea, only from the perspective that we don't really fit inside of that mission. We fit in part of it with some things that are proposing to do, but then we're different in some other ways. So it's functionally, I don't know that that process would get the attention it needs in the other areas. Another point we're making for reauthorization is when DHS S&T was stood up, the money was removed from USFA for research and development and put under S&T. And that happened several years back. And now it's not really funded. The staff has to go out and try to cobble together funds to get research done, or encourage NIST to do it, encourage someone else to do it. So I mentioned that to Fugate a week or so or 2 ago, and he said, well, why don't, he understands, he says, why don't you, we'll see if we're allowed to actually be there. But if not, we are giving them all of our written documentation on the status of the programs they're interested in. But we think we could better represent our needs and why we need certain levels of appropriation. So right now we don't know how that ends up, but we'd like to represent ourselves on that. So I'm trying not to get real technical, but if you have technical questions about things going on inside the USFA, please ask. If I don't have that information for you today, I will get it for you. Otherwise, if you have some more general questions, philosophical questions, again, for me, it's that we use our data to analyze what our real needs are, and that we begin to address those. We are starting our strategic plan update this next week. We'll be meeting to see where we are, where we are trying to go, look at the environment and see if there are things we need to change in that plan and update it. And then we'll put that information out to all of you, to the groups for input. But our mission is the same. I would guess that most of the goals are going to remain. The challenge is how well are we doing at accomplishing those goals. And if there are things that we need to add, then we'll add. If there are things that it's like mission accomplished, we can take those off. Staff said, well, are we going to work on a new mission statement, a new vision statement? I said, if you think we need to, I said, but I'm not so interested in that. I'm interested in what we get done and what that affects the people in the field. So we'll be working on that for the next couple of months, month to 2 months. And those are done really fun things that we'll be working on. Those are the main points. Oh, data. I asked a group of IAFC presidents at a meeting, I said, so if there's something that really needs work at USFA that you would have me work on, what would that be? And they thought for a moment, and then what got the most airtime was data and inputs. And everything from fix it to blow it up and start over. So I've been asking questions about interest from the beginning. There have been recent changes made to it. I know we are at the USFA able to create reports easier. And I know that some of the information there is dated, and some of that is because of slow reporting, some of that. But I had some numbers about it just to let you know what is going on with that. Those are probably the ones that aren't popping up here. In 2010, there were over 21 million incidents reported in that system. It is the largest fire reporting database in the world. And we had 22,915 departments reporting. So that's not everyone, but we're getting better. And so I want to be better at drilling down into some of the specifics in our fire death and injury rate, our loss rates, better identify where the problems are so we know where the targets are, and also begin to talk about how do we get through in those areas or to those whatever segments of the population that are most affected. And we've been doing certain things and carrying certain programs, and we've seen reductions in those rates. But there are certain areas and certain groups that aren't really following that decline. So that was one of the things that came out in this question about passion. I think we can do better in those areas, but we need to really identify it and start to save some of those lives. A lot of the questions that I got about NPERS was about local departments being able to get useful information out and in a timely fashion. So I can tell you that these things are being worked on, and that the presentation that I had just this week from the data folks says that this year it's being tied in so that you can get your local information, other jurisdictions' information, compare your information. You can get it in more than one fashion. I told them we need to make that report that was given to us. We need to make that information known to everybody. You don't have to have special software. You can download things into Excel. You don't even have to download things. You'll be able to access it on the web and create reports and get information just on the web if you don't want to download it. There is a program you can use if you like to, but you won't have to. And with this next phase, told that it should be, get through all the testing of it and get the kinks out, then it should be available sometime this year. I tried to pin down a date when they started doing that moonwalk thing. So I didn't really get a date. But I said by mid-year, no. So maybe I'm hoping by the end of the year that we can report what and how to generate really useful reports for you, and that will satisfy a lot. Now there's a piece that we had requested to add GIS to the system and to be able to geocode the information. And somewhere in the appropriation process, last 3 years ago, it gave us back, or last year, that they added back $1.5 million to get that done. However, FEMA, somewhere in FEMA CFO's office, decided there was a better purpose for that $1 million, and so we don't have that. So now we're trying to, I've told them how displeased I was with that, and I've been told that we can probably identify the funds to get that done, but we'll see. We're working on trying to get it so we can get this tied into GIS so people can do a good job of plotting and having visuals that would help you to show people in your jurisdictions what your fire problems are. So we'll keep looking for ways to do that and trying to move that one forward. That's a challenge, but it sounds promising. But I'm going to keep with and after our data folks to say, we really need this. It's really a service we need to be providing. It's not good enough to just collect all the data. The purpose of collecting all of that data is to make it useful. So everyone's in agreement. They're working hard on it, but it costs, and we need to move it forward. So that's we are revisiting our classes at the academy. There are a number of classes going through rewrite right now. Let's see, but updating 57 of the most popular courses. We are researching more subjects that might be important, modernizing the communications technology, making it, putting Wi-Fi throughout the campus. We've got the FEMA IT folks worked out a way to get that done. And doing some other enhancements to the learning environment. We had a visit recently from Senator McCullsky out of Massachusetts, Maryland. Right. And so I was out there for that, and our partner Ron Sarnicki was there for the meeting, and so was EMI, and so were our legislative folks, and we were talking to her about needs. So we did get into some conversation about if we had more space, we could bring in more students. We talked about, because of the way things work, we actually, Ron helped us quite a bit with what could be done, what kind of plans could be done, and how to do it, and what kind of potential partnerships. But we even talked about purchasing some property right across the road. So we'll see how that goes. Right now, we're focusing on the mobile homes that people are using, that we're using, and our lack of office space and taking out dorms to get more offices. So we think she and her staff are helping us with that. So we're trying to see if we can move that forward. And what else do we have going like that? That would be a large help to us if we can modernize and maintain. We've recently redone a lot of work out there because of problems with heating and air conditioning. So a lot of that work's now complete. And I think overall, we're making things better. So,
Chief Buckman, question?
Question? God.
I know Shane's got one, but
Okay.
let him chime.
In your short time in FEMA, Ernie, as it relates to the relationship between FEMA and the fire service, do you think that FEMA has respect for the fire service and vice versa?
from what I have seen in, like I say, the short time, I think there are a number of people inside FEMA that do. Some of the key people. But I also see that there are people, I think that Administrator Fugate does, and he gets it. But I also see, you have a number of, how did someone tell me, there's a pretty good sized Coast Guard presence that they may not quite see us as being part of that leadership or that necessary, because I think the idea that it's not that we're not significant, but I think that focus being so much on emergency management that we're not seen as, it's not understood as to how we can really assist and strengthen emergency management. So what I'm trying to get them to begin to see is we can make emergency management easier for you and strengthen the effort because we have better connections into the local resources, and that the fire service providers and the fire services are probably potentially the best on-scene resources that you have, if properly supported and brought into the process. And on the USFA side, some of the folks are so dedicated and devoted to the mission, the original mission and the major focus, that it's almost like, man, we don't need all that FEMA stuff, And so, but I would like to get everyone to understand is that we may not need all of the FEMA things, rules and processes and bureaucracy, but we need their support. And so I hope that answers that. But there are some that see it, but on the USFA side, I think sometimes I think FEMA's just kind of in the way of fulfilling our purpose. And that, to a certain extent, that could be true because of just the red tape.
Thank you.
Right? Anybody good?
Going back to NFIRS, I know that our county fire marshal had huge difficulty accessing data because of the protocols required to get clearance to access it. And yet you would think, and I think TexFIRS, NFIRS worked it out, but it took a long time. Scott, if you remember that story, but our county's quite large, and he was trying to mine that data to help understand the fire problem in our county, and just couldn't get through that wall because he wasn't a fire department, even though he's a fire marshal for over about 2 million people. So that might be one of the barriers as you're working through this. Make sure that they kind of understand there may not be fire departments that want the data. It could be fire marshals.
I will ask. I don't know what that is.
I didn't know the details.
Believe me, there's a lot of firewalls and barriers to data access in the system. I mean, when I was trying to do that credit card training, they needed to update Adobe and something else. I couldn't go there and get it updated. I had to get a tech to come in to my desk and do these updates. And I go, wouldn't that be like a trusted website if all I'm doing is an update? But no, someone has to come in and do it. So, and then when I talked to the tech, he said they've cut half of the tech in the building. So things are, it took 2 weeks before somebody came out to address that.
Most of those things, though, are a state issue. Our state, when I first went into South Carolina, the state grants access to the national So I can go on the website here and log in under SC. So whoever the state gives that out to, they're fine with it, because it's control of what reports you can run. So I know in South Carolina, we were our own office.
That's a good point. And when I talk to staff about some of the stories I hear, a lot of it goes back to we're working through the states. The software upgrades somehow though will allow people to pull their data out and other data without going through the state.
Anyone else have a question? Don't be bashful. You have a quick brother.
Part of what we're working on is the strategic plan or whatever we're calling it now.
Vision.
Vision, yeah. It's working towards some financial and portability, and we really need a national partner to do that. And we talked with the UK, with the USFA, but I think we're looking at what you might be willing to work in on that, as far as warehousing some of the data and some of that kind of stuff, don't go right.
I know that I have heard bits and pieces about credentialing being a touchy issue at the federal level. In fact, I remember being called in Pittsburgh one time for some sort of credentialing work session, an initiative that was started. We participated, they sent us away, and I never heard another thing. It's like, well, somebody threw this out. So, but to answer your question, I think something along the lines of credentialing is going to come up. Credentialing, identifying, understanding who's who and what skill is what skill, some compatibility, in some ways. And we will support that for the entire fire service. As far as opening that. In fact, when we started talking about the FFAS and the firefighter deployment, the question came up, I guess, the last time they tried something like that, there were some pay problems and getting people compensated, but we worked it out. And I believe we'll work it out. We did mutual aid and disaster responses and strike teams with career combination and volunteer departments in California all the time. And everybody got compensated. So we can work that out. I believe we can work credentialing out and support that for everybody. If that's...
Yeah, I think, and I don't really want to speak out of turn, but, we were interested in some kind of national credentialing and in some reciprocity issues, I think, do a lot of support for people, because we're finding as volunteers move out, they have to redo all their training and observe and recruitment and retention, not just for national deployment, but just on a day-to-day basis, but there's no national system of training and credentialing.
I think it's doable. I think it's a lot of work because from what I've seen in my previous time spent with DHS, S&T, even though they're great ideas, trying to get it done on a national basis, it's just hard.
Fred's got 20 years, he said he's a great deal.
Some of these, and I would invite comments now or later, anytime. But I was at a meeting the other day that the IAFC put together on mass evacuation, and I happened to be sitting at the table with a gentleman from NFPA. And he was, the NFPA always wants to do more standards. Not that they make any money on it, but I've heard that they always want to do more standards. And so no, he said, well, even on the framework that this group, the National Government Association, NFPA, IAFC, are going to work on for mass evacuation, probably it gets more exposure and use if it's a standard, how to, and a model. And why not things like credentialing or whatever we want to call it, but how reciprocity works and portability and somehow setting up a recommended way, a model for people to follow, because while it can be planned and put together nationally, it's going to have to happen most probably state to state. You know? So I think with the right partners in the room, I think we can do that.
Anyone else? Gentlemen, you have a question, please? Nate?
How about comments?
Sure. Okay, comment. Name?
Particular to ESF board, we get caught up in that because it is the Department of Agriculture, but when you read ESF 4, it is firefighting provides federal support for detection and suppression of wildland, rural, and urban. Same way our deployment models are set up, but we get caught up in deployment. We want to credential the whole world before we even deploy. And that's what's happening. And so, too, the other thing is there's two different models within ESF 4 that says obtaining firefighting resources for incidents other than wildland, and there's a track that says here's how you do this. That's where we ought to be involved. The local, state, and feds under the USFA, and not the wildland, because there's a whole separate track for the wildland that goes into the mobilization guide. So
That's exactly what we're talking about. We're saying Forest Service handle the wildland, and the USFA and the structural firefighting world handle the rest. Now, and when it's a WUI, the urban interface there, then there may be some unified command situations there. But that's all we're talking about, and we're working through that. We do know we have the support of the FEMA administrator, and there are some rewrites going on, so we're trying to work through that. There's a lot coming out with a PPD 8. You've been hearing that. There's some tight deadlines. So we're trying to see how we work through some changes through these many processes that are going on.
And I believe if a state can get it right, that's the key to developing a national model, not us as states waiting on the national to develop it. We've got some states where the IFC has been into, in particular Tennessee. Low-cost model. Ohio is one of the flagships for that. It says we need 90 tankers in 90 minutes. We exercise that all the time. We can't be Mavis, but we can use it, and we don't worry about pay and all that other stuff. Who's got insurance? We passed the State Mutual Aid Act that allows us to cross jurisdictions and blah, blah, blah. So I think there's some models out there that would help us get through that, but the holdup seems to always be in ESF 4 is the IMT team, the incident management team.
Okay.
And our thing is to use a smaller version of the IST, incident support teams, that's the trigger point prior to IMT. Because the IMT gets the forest, Smokey the Bear comes out and gets all crossed up.
Yeah, my sense of it is that the Forest Service, well, I've been directly involved in California with the Forest Service and the incident management teams, and how do we get our people trained up to that, and it's not easy, especially when they're smaller. But we were able to send people out, and they became part of those teams, and then they come back and train people and work for us that way. But that's the part I think the Forest Service really likes holding on to. And we're saying, well, we don't need, there are alternatives to that system for the structure for our community, but we won't be able to get to those if we have to go through the Forest Service.
The crosswalk? Yeah. The crosswalk that's discussed with the CG as far as how you make that tie. I haven't heard about it.
I don't know.
The structural world and the wildland. The problem with the crosswalk was it just sucks. I don't know what else to say about it.
There are still people devoting a little time to that, I know, and working on that, but doesn't seem to have much momentum. That's the only, I'll ask the question now that you brought it up. Bringing that up in that process. And so I know that there's still some people putting in a little time on that, but it doesn't seem to be. No, again, the Forest Service, I think, they really are holding on to their standards for everything. Not that
fix it. So that's what
You mentioned about the reauthorization. Was that reauthorization from